Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Margaret Bui. I have been working in the talent space for close to two decades, mostly in talent acquisition, hiring for technology companies of different sizes, both startups, series A, B, C, and D, and also some larger tech companies, and hiring very internationally across different geographies and different functions. So engineering, product, and all different corporate functions. Apart from that, I do interview training and coaching, and happy to help with anything related to hiring, interviewing, and also training.
Thank you, Margaret. Yes, Jeff.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, Anton. Jeff Wellstead here. I'm an American living just outside London. Been doing so for about 20 years now. And I basically focus on working with startup, hyper-growth startup scale-ups. I have done some, pretty solid mid-market work in the landscape of basically either transforming the existing HR function, or in some cases building it from scratch. But my additional focus is also on embracing and engaging AI, and then empowering HR teams and or the HR function to use AI to really kind of help accelerate, handing over the mundane and difficult tasks, repetitive tasks and things of that nature, and giving HR basically some headspace to go and deliver some incredible value to the organization. But that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Yes, Carl.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carl Tischler. I also am American. I've been here for 30 years. I wouldn't read anything too much into that with Jeff and I, but my focus is twofold. I do now fractional chief people officer work to deep tech companies, but my primary focus is a academy that I have called the HPNA Academy, where we train high performers in how to systematically take better care of themselves. I previously ran the people side of a deep tech business called Hazy for 6.5 years, and my original background was in private equity and finance.
Still there, Anton?
Sorry, I am,
There
but me and my fat thumbs though aren't going that well. Okay, so thank you very much for your introductions. Really appreciate that. What would you say in terms of what you've seen out there, and especially what you're seeing now? What would you say are the main do's and don'ts when it comes to founders and their work with people, whether it is finding or hiring or keeping or empowering the right people, whatever that may be, or the tools they use or the methods? What would you say are their biggest do's and don'ts? Sorry, your biggest do's and don'ts. And maybe if you can think one each, and maybe not the same thing for both do and don't. And don't worry about repeating stuff you might have told us before, because unfortunately, founders keep making the same mistakes all over again. So maybe this one, we can start with Jeff, then Carl, and then Margaret, please. One each if you can.
Cool. I've gone off piste. You'll be happy to know, Anton, so you don't have to hear the same old every time. Trying to generate some new ideas. This one is going to be about hiring for adaptability and not just sort of pedigree. And when I say pedigree, I'm talking about, university degrees. I'm talking about prior work experiences, brands that people have worked for, and so forth. What you basically want to ensure that you do is always ever, especially at this stage in your young organization's lifespan, is to really hire people who are incredibly flexible, adaptable, and can engage to a variety of different kind of externalities and internalities, for that matter, because that's basically what startup world is all about. So make sure that you test hard on getting real life examples of where it is they basically have had to really stretch themselves very much outside their comfort zone, and how basically they handled that at speed. Hopefully it comes across as being the essence of who they are, and not sort of just a one-off survivalistic element. The don't I would suggest is, please don't forget about leadership development. So as a founder, as sort of a C-suite member, whatever it is, whoever it is you deem a leader in your organization, do make sure that you do connect, even with some extraordinarily affordable learning and development solutions, and minimally, kind of meet with each other and talk about the leadership challenges that you guys have had, not just business challenges, but what it's like actually leading others, and how basically you can share your thoughts, ideas, and experience with one another to basically help lift, because leadership and management is critically important. That's mine.
Thanks, Jeff. If I'm up next, I first of all
Yes, Carl.
totally agree with Jeff's point about hiring the person, not the CV, or not the meme of the person. I do think in early stage, my kind of tip would be to retain also just flexibility of how you engage with people. I think you can get, instead of your default position being I'm going to hire someone as an employee, I think it's better in general to have a default position of I'm going to try and contract with someone and work together and see if we like each other and see what our flexibility is, etc. So not rushing into hiring itself for the sake of hiring, I think, is important. I think the thing that goes with that is when you do have the right person, to absolutely do hire them and do bring them on board, and do start the kind of retention process from the outset. So those would be the two related things from my side.
I would say one do would be to streamline the hiring process. So great candidates won't wait for a clunky, 2-month hiring process. So design like a 2 or 3 stages process. I mean, it might be a little bit more for a senior leadership position, but in general, initial call, maybe like 2 or 3 interviews, but they could happen on the same day, a couple of interviews and some kind of practical assignment to see how the candidate thinks, and then schedule also interviews quickly and provide feedback fast, ideally within maximum 48 hours to 70, 48 to 72 hours ideally. And use some simple tech tools, even if you are a brand new startup. So could be Calendly for scheduling, Trello or Airtable for tracking candidates if you don't have an ATS yet, Google Meet for interviews or Zoom for interviews. And instead of like multiple long interviews, you might want to do like a 30-minute founder chat, 1 hour, skills interview, and maybe like a final team alignment call, all within a week. And in terms of don'ts, well, I would say just like don't overpromise, like building trust starts at that first conversation. So be honest about the risks and funding stage and runway and work-life balance and uncertainty, and also like set realistic expectations about career trajectory. So yes, there's an upside, but also there are no guarantees. So instead of telling someone you'll be a VP of engineering next year, it's better to be honest and say if we hit Series A growth milestones, there will be opportunities for leadership roles. I have more, but you just wanted one, right?
No, that's okay. That works very well. Thank you very much, Margaret. Really appreciate that from all 3 of you, actually. A quick reset of the room. We've only got 44 minutes to go. This is Startup Talent Q&A 154. We're going to be here now for the next 44 minutes, helping startups with whatever questions you may have on your people journey, whether you want to talk about how and where to find the right people, how to convince them to come and work for you, how to interview them or test them, or maybe how to pay them, or how to decide which tasks they actually need to do, and maybe how to train them on certain things. Or perhaps you want to build your company culture and even your employment or employer branding. Any of these questions are valid. There are literally no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. We have some amazing people on our panels. For those of you that are tuning in via LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please be aware that unfortunately we're unable to monitor your questions there live. So you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. The quickest way to do that is to go to our website, startuptoscaleup.club. Once you're there, then simply click on today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 154. Once you've done that, you can then you'll get a you'll get a link really to your email to register. Sorry, after you registered, you'll get a link, and then you can join us here on Microsoft Teams, and you can type your question in the chat. We then give you the mic, and you can ask our team. If you have other questions that are not related to hiring and people in startups, then please save them for the other conversations we run. On Mondays, it's talent. On Tuesdays, product and tech. On Wednesdays, growth. On Thursdays, fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And you can actually RSVP to any of them via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. And actually, when you're there, what you might want to do is join our WhatsApp community. It's groups of founders, investors, and operators that you can join us on to discuss and then connect with each other, really. Now, we're going to go to a question that was sent in to us. I hope this isn't from last time because it sounds a bit familiar, but so as the co-founder of a pre-seed software startup in New York, where we develop cloud-based project management tools, how can we ensure that our remote team remains connected and productive despite the geographical distances? Additionally, how do we maintain company culture with a distributed workforce across different time zones? Interesting. Maybe we should start with Carl, then Margaret, then Jeff. What would you do here?
Well, I think the first thing is to say, and others may disagree, but I think remote first is a very, very challenging configuration. I'm not like reactionary, telling everyone they need to go to work in the office 5 days a week, etc. It's not like that. I personally find it very challenging configuration for all the reasons that are asked in this question. And I think the degree of difficulty in helping look after staff, helping them look after themselves, having built a coherent, high-performing culture, because all of those things are interrelated. I just think the degree of difficulty is much higher with remote. So I think the first thing I would check is that all of your people who are remote, do they really, really understand themselves and have made a conscious decision, and remote is best for them to begin with? Because what can easily happen is, a job is a job, and someone who is not, like, let's say by nature or configuration, a remote person can end up just in a remote job. And so I think that's something that requires a lot of effort to look at and to make sure that's the case. I think the thing that follows from that is, I personally have, even for very early stage companies, I personally think that working from home, whatever your home is, etc., is also very challenging. I think it can pretty easily give rise to mental health challenges. And at least what we've done on that when we have had remote workers is to do everything we can to encourage people to not work from home literally all of the time. So I think these are like fundamental things that need attention upfront and on an ongoing basis first, before then thinking about, well, how do I optimize it, etc. I think in terms of what does work for companies that are remote first, I think the good thing about this, I can't say that it's a solved problem, but there are lots and lots of great companies that are remote first and that have a lot of great resources on this. So I think it's great to be asking a question of this forum, but I think I would also encourage people to look at what's available from other remote companies, because people do share a lot about them, whether that's like GitHub or others. So those are some thoughts.
Thank you, Carl. Margaret. You're at a remote first, I believe, company. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So I actually work for a fully remote company, and I kind of think that it's either fully remote or everyone goes to the office, even 3 days a week. I think that the kind of hybrid setups, that's what's challenging, when some people go to the office and some people never go to the office. I actually think that's very, very challenging. So if it's fully remote and people are happy to work, and there are a lot of people who just want to work remote. By the way, like, as a recruiter, I can tell you that there are so many people, especially in engineering, that I'm hiring, and yeah, that's kind of the, people are only looking for remote positions. So everyone is different. I agree, it's not good for everyone, and not everyone will benefit, but yeah, a lot of people do like that. So, but anyway, I think the question was more about how, not what we think of that, but just how do we maintain the culture and everything. So I think, staying connected and productive comes down to being very intentional about communication, culture, and alignment, not just assuming it will happen naturally, and I think at this stage, the goal is to really create some like lightweight systems that support collaboration without actually adding bureaucracy. So to keep the team connected and productive, you need some kind of clear rituals or communication rhythm. So for example, a short weekly all hands, maybe daily async stand-ups via Slack or Notion. That's what our engineering team is doing. They have these daily async stand-ups. Monthly one-to-ones. I have a meeting with my boss twice a month. We have like an all hands company call twice a month as well, just where we share, like, the CEOs and other team leads will share about the project and numbers and how the company is doing financially. You can also use tools like Loom, which I use a lot for quick video updates. Miro, maybe for brainstorming. We use shared documents in Notion and Google Drive to keep everyone on the same page. So the key is really to create like structured transparency. Everyone should know what others are working on without needing constant live check-ins. And in terms of maintaining the culture, I mean, that's definitely challenging, but you also need to build culture into how you work, not just into social events. So, I mean, those are nice if you can do them, for sure, but that also, means being explicit about your values, recognizing team contributions publicly. So, for example, shout outs in Slack. We also have these public recognitions during those all hands meetings every couple of weeks. Encouraging cross-functional collaboration from the start. You can also introduce maybe some like simple culture building habits, like rotating, wins of the week, or shout outs, or casual virtual coffee chat. So we use Donut for that on Slack. Even like a shared team playlist, or a fun channel. Like, we actually have like a few different fun channels on Slack, because that can build a sense of personality and connection as well. So I think the culture in remote teams is not just about geography, although I think where you hire people, it does make a difference. Like, for example, at Mixmax, we hire people like for engineering in Europe and Latin America. We're not hiring in Asia because the time zone would make no difference. But in general, this culture in remote teams is about consistency, communication, and shared purpose. And like, if everyone understands why they're here, how does the work fit into the bigger picture, if they feel seen and valued, that's kind of culture in action, no matter where they are. That's all from me.
Damn it, Margaret, you did it again. You thought of everything.
I work for a remote company. That's actually my second remote company. So I guess that was an easy question for me to answer.
You're very, very smart, obviously, and extraordinarily well versed in all this stuff. That was super helpful. Thank you for that. Look, I want to make sure I don't tread on the things Margaret already talked about, because they're super important. And I would just simply kind of note, make sure that if you're going to be a remote company, that you do design a culture with intentionality. It's not just sort of a passive, let's hope that people basically kind of remain engaged and connected and everything else. You really need to kind of define that this is a culture that says this is the way we work. This is how we engage with each other. This is how we make decisions. Here's how we feedback, all those other kinds of things. And make sure that you kind of codify, these values in some kind of an action format, and really kind of help people kind of understand, not through like brutal enforcement, but just make sure that that everybody kind of understands, like, these are the rules of the road. This is how we operate. And that basically then tends to kind of help inoculate your remote environment, hopefully from having mismatches. Margaret mentioned something that I'm going to emphasize one more time, which is this notion of having like these rituals of connection with each other. It's really, really important. I've worked for several remote first companies. And to basically have, again, sort of a weekly all hands thing, or having like remote social events, or themed, stand-ups and things of that nature, can really kind of be a lot of fun for people. I did a lot of this during COVID. I did a lot of this with some of the remote first companies, and people really respond well to it. People just want connection. They want to know that, what everybody's up to, what everybody's lived experiences and everything else. One of the things that I think is super important, though, there's a natural tendency to move towards sort of a surveillance management approach in terms of remote first, when people potentially have missed a deadline or their work is not necessarily up to par. There's sort of like this notion of, oh, see, can't trust them, to work on their own. I better dive into this. I think what you'd rather do in terms of a cultural fit around this, and again, something you definitely want to communicate with transparency and clarity, is make sure that everybody understands it's about what you produce and it's about your outcomes. Okay. What we're not going to do is micromanage you and tell you that you absolutely have to be sat in this seat doing this work on this from this time to this time, that kind of thing. That really basically, kind of destroys trust and connection between the employee and the company. So focus on, really clear goal setting frameworks, like objectives and key results, as an example. Make sure you kind of revisit those things once a week at 15 minutes max. That's all you have to do if you can kind of stay on track with it. Just find out how people are doing against their goals, what help they need, what air cover, what advice, what counsel, whatever the case. Always ever be there to help each other out, but be clear on what goals you need to set and what outputs you're looking for. Don't over meet. It's a natural tendency to kind of like jump on 5, 6, 7, kind of meetings a day. That just completely ruins your productivity in between. So make sure that you kind of only meet about stuff that's really critical and there's a decision to be made. And from a time, I think time zones were kind of mentioned in this thing. And that's a real challenge too. Make sure you manage time zones with intentionality. Again, map these things out. Who sits where at what time zone, and kind of map out what the overlapping times are. And make sure that that everybody in the organization, if they're setting up meetings or they're needing to reach out or connect to somebody, that they're just hyper aware of what time is it, at that destination point. So that, number one, your chances of connecting with somebody are much better. Number one. Number two, making sure that people, kind of understand that I still have sort of a reasonable life. It's not like my remote life means they can contact me 24/7. That's just not on. That can destroy a culture in that space. But that's all I'll say about that right now. Anton.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify, because I haven't used Slack lately, but if I remember correctly, you can set it in a way that it actually shows the person you're trying to reach out to what time it is where they are. Is that right? Does anybody?
That sounds familiar. Yeah, I think
I've
seen that. Margaret?
Sorry, what was the question?
If Slack has local,
I haven't used.
I think it
Yeah.
does.
Slack has what?
Yeah,
Sorry.
local time. So basically, I can't remember exactly how it was done, but I think last time I used Slack when I was with another, like embedded in one of the companies, they did it in a way so that every time you try and reach out to a person on their profile, it had the time, the local time where they were at.
Oh, I see. So we don't have that on our Slack, but maybe that's just the way it's set up. Maybe that's just a setup. Yeah. But you can also, you can just like turn off your notification after a certain time, right? So.
Indeed.
Yeah, I don't see it in mine. But we only hire in like a few specific locations. I think everyone knows who people are in any case. So, but yeah, not a bad idea. We're a bigger company.
Thank you very much for that, Margaret. Okay, well, just before we go on to the next question, we are now 31 minutes into our hourly Q&A, and we've got Rosie who's going to introduce herself, and then we will go on to the next question. Just a reminder, for those of you that are tuning in via LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please be aware that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there live. So if you've got any questions for our amazing talent panel, simply go to our site, startuptoscaleup.club, look for today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 154, click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to your email. You click on that link and then Bob's your uncle. You're in our Microsoft Teams call, which is audio only. Most of the live streams, by the way, I have also pinned a link on them for you to go directly to the Teams call. But if for any reason that's not working, simply go to our site and we're more than happy to then answer calls once you're here with us on Microsoft Teams to answer questions on how to get your talent right. Rosie, please introduce yourself. And I guess Rosie can't introduce herself because she has not been made presenter yet. And that is because Rosie has not joined us with the same email that I invited you. Can you hear us now, Rosie? I have just made you a presenter. So if you try your audio now, it should work. I don't know why it's not working. I've made you a presenter and I've given you the mic, so that's very strange. Would you like to try and leave the room and then come back again, Rosie? Hopefully you can hear us. I have given you the mic, so if you can try and leave the room and then come back. Yes, she has. Good. All right, let's go on to the next question. It's in the chat, but I'll read it out loud for those of you that are following this via the live streams. I'm the co-founder of a pre-seed biotech startup in Cambridge, developing portable diagnostic kits. Sorry, I'm trying to let Rosie in at the same time as reading this. Right, there we go. Where is Rosie? Rosie presenter. There you go. Right, do you want to give that a try, Rosie, now? It's very strange. I have made you a presenter, and for whatever reason, okay, let me make you an attendee again. Let me try just the mic. Do you want to try that now, Rosie? Do you want to try and unmute? Right, that's not working either. I think you may be following us via a web link, and maybe your settings are set in a certain way so that it doesn't allow the mic on whichever web browser you're doing this from. I have a feeling that's what it is. So maybe try either the app or look at your settings to enable the mic, because I've given you presenter credentials, so I have no idea. On Chrome, exactly. So on Chrome, you may need to look at your mic credentials. Sometimes my mic is, yeah. So you might want to. No, I've already enabled your mic, and I have made you a presenter, Rosie. So unless you want to maybe try and download Teams, the app itself, and then hopefully during the last few minutes or however we have long, shouldn't take too long for Teams to be downloaded if you'd like to try that. Right, okay, let's go and read that question now. I'm the founder of a pre-seed biotech startup in Cambridge, developing portable diagnostic kits for infectious diseases in remote and underserved areas. As our team grows, we've attracted talent from different countries, and I'm struggling to manage the complexities of international HR, particularly in onboarding and compliance across borders. With limited resources, what foundational steps can we take to build a basic global HR structure that ensures compliance and cultural cohesion? Additionally, how can we effectively support new international hires as they integrate into our UK-based core team. Interesting. I think for this one, we can start with Margaret, then we can go on to Jeff, and then Carl, please.
Sure. And by the way, I think there was one other question we didn't answer yet, but we can go back to that later. So yeah, just to answer this question, yeah, happy to answer that because I have been working for companies in kind of like a similar.
I'm sorry, Margaret, you are right. I skipped a question, my bad. But let's answer this and then we'll go.
Exactly. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So, so this is basically like a very common challenge for globally growing, not just pre-seed teams in general, different businesses, but you definitely don't need a full HR department to build a solid international foundation, because with some like really basic systems and clarity, you can manage cross-border HR efficiently and even on limited resources. So firstly, to ensure compliance without setting up entities in every country, you can use either an employer of record platform or just hire contractors remotely. So Mixmax uses a company called Deal, D-E-E-L, but there are also other ones like Oyster, I think there's Papaya Global, Remote.com, there's something called Boundless as well. So basically, if you hire the EOR, employer of record, these services legally employ your international hires on your behalf, and they handle contracts, like local contracts, payroll, taxes, and statutory benefits, while just letting you stay focused on your mission. So they cost effective for small teams, and they also provide that peace of mind from a legal standpoint. The company I'm currently working for, called Mixmax, we do not actually have an employer of record. We use Deal, and all of these other companies offer that as well, where we hire contractors, because if you only have one or two people in each country, it actually might not make sense financially to have that EOR, employer of record, set up. So we hire contractors. So basically, they just have the independent contractors. They will have their own limited company or any kind of setup like that, their own company. We pay them twice a month by a Deal, but then they need to pay their own taxes. So I would just look at companies like Deal, like Remote.com, and just have a look at both employer of record and a contractor setup, just to see what makes more sense for your business. And then in terms of supporting those different teams, so I would create like a lightweight but clear onboarding playbook that works across borders. So what you might want to include is a welcome message from the founder, overview of your mission and product, what the first 30 to 60, 90 days would look like, tools that they would use, Slack or Notion, communication norms and time zone expectations. We, by the way, we have all of this stuff in Notion, so you can very easily create that in Notion and send to all the new hires. And that basically helps every new hire, regardless of location, start with the same shared context and clarity. And as kind of similar to the previous answer about the culture, keeping the culture in a remote environment. So establish a few remote friendly rituals, so maybe a brief weekly team meeting across time zones. Maybe those async daily updates like Slack check-ins, maybe a casual monthly call for connection, like coffee chat, get to know you sessions. Encourage cultural sharing. So we sometimes have it like occasionally, like let people talk about the local holidays, work customs, even lead a short team session on something from the region, because that also fosters inclusion and belonging. We actually had someone presenting maybe just a couple of slides during those reply all calls that we have regularly. So people will share about the local customs or holidays. It's actually been really, really interesting. Just to learn something new, so that was actually really good. And then also like make sure you check in regularly with new hires, maybe like have a buddy system. But yeah, like our HR will have check-ins, but obviously like, maybe they can have a buddy as well that can check in with them, but also you check in regularly with new hires, maybe like a 30-minute call after week 1, week 4, and month 2. That can just uncover blockers and make international employees feel valued, not just like distant contributors. So that's what I would do.
Very good. Thank you very much, Margaret. I think it was Jeff and then Carl, please.
I tell you what, that was a very, very full and brilliant response, Margaret. Well done on all that. Yeah, the things I would add, simply not to repeat what Margaret's already kind of gone through, other than to simply, I guess, highlight and to emphasize that using tools and vendors like Deal and Papaya and Oyster and so forth are super, super helpful. They basically think about absolutely everything related to that individual in their local environment and make sure that you're fully compliant with all that. Not to mention, of course, having global payroll, which is super useful. But moving slightly away from the technical and the sort of nuts and bolts of things, the other things I think I would just simply add would just be to make sure that you do things like anchor everybody in the same kind of mission, vision, cultural values. That's super, super important. And to show evidence of that at the highest levels of the company in terms of people who do these things, who follow through on these things, who exhibit these behaviors that you're looking for are super, super important. It creates a sense of psychological continuity and trust and safety amongst your people. And so when people feel like, look, this definitely is hard work. It's a fast-moving, hard-driving, organization. We're trying to bring something either disruptive or very competitive to market, and we're looking to stand out. There's a lot of pressure on people to kind of do that. And the last thing that they need and you need as a founder is to have doubt, insecurity, confusion about how it is they're meant to behave on the inside of the walls of your organization versus kind of the other work that they have to do, which is worry about what happens on the outside and how they can be effective in that way. So just make sure everybody's anchored in the same mission and values, right? Make sure that you create bridges across cultural and geography and even gender and religions and all those kinds of things. Is really interesting and kind of fun, to Margaret's point, to kind of learn about people and to learn about what their challenges and interesting rituals are and so forth. The other thing, and basically make sure too that you help tie people's work, to kind of global impact. For instance, like if you are doing, kind of diagnostic work and you're helping clinics in Nigeria, reduce diagnostic time by 60%, that's super exciting and super important for people to know. It's not just mindless corporate work that they're doing. They're actually making a difference in the world. So make sure you communicate that kind of thing too. And yeah, I think the other thing is just from an onboarding perspective, I think it's really important that you kind of at a very, very early stage, always ever assign people coming into the organization, to somebody who's been there, done that, has a lot of scar tissue, a lot of memory, a lot of knowledge around how things work in the organization. And importantly, are optimistic and positive about the direction they're going. That's sometimes hard to find, but it's really important that you basically hook somebody up with another human being, not just with an onboarding process and a bunch of training and things of that nature. But I'll leave it there for Carl to finish up.
Thank you very much. And actually, Carl, if you want to focus maybe on the actual tools, cheap and cheerful stuff, if you can think of any of that's great. But obviously, any other input is welcome too. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the cheapest thing are tools that you already have and learning how to use them to deployed in what you're talking, and what we're looking to do, basically. I do think, just building on what Jeff was saying, I think there are sort of two things I'd call out. First, this idea of tying everything to an outcome. I heard it said about McLaren, the racing company, that they have a culture unlike kind of any others that someone I know had the chance to see firsthand, which is they have everything down to what they call a single currency, a single metric, which for them is lap time. So not, if you think about it, winning or losing races, but lap time, right? Which is the largely controllable part of it. And they keep everything, whatever anyone is doing, the single question always is like, is this making us faster? Is this helping to make us faster? And I used to have a pretty dim view of metrics like that. But I think this one, and hearing again how McLaren does it, I think is extremely powerful. And that is one of these things that does connect across, if it's done correctly, and your business lends itself to something like that. That's very effective as it reaches across kind of all other divides, cultural, geographic, or otherwise. I think the other thing, though, that relates to this is to be incredibly mindful about what you are rewarding in the company. What gets praised, what gets rewarded in the company. Usually it's things like, oh, so-and-so, slept under the desk of the client and was there for 3 days in a row. And that kind of heroic is fine, but that, if you really think about it, is actually very destructive to a person's health. And you can end up, if you're not careful, really, that's the message and takeaway that people have. So I think being thoughtful and creative about what you are rewarding. It doesn't have to be an economic reward. Like in our academy, for instance, we're very, very focused on having a lifetime habit of a weekly cadence of a sort of self-check-in, in effect. And after a number of years of doing this, we got to the fact that the only award we have is what we call the Purple Horse, which is for getting back on the horse, i.e. you've missed a week or whatever, 2 weeks. Well, it's getting back on that matters, because it's actually, when we boiled it down, it's actually resilience of that core habit that's the key thing. And that's something that is not is not paid. That's something you can use in your existing channels. And I think those are things that can be very, very effective, almost disproportionately effective. So some things to consider.
Thank you very much to you as well, Carl. Huge thanks to all three of you, actually. I think we've got time for another one or maybe two quick questions. Just a quick reminder to those of you on the live streams, we are unable to monitor your questions there. So if you do have any for us, please come and join us here on Microsoft Teams. Quickest way to do that is simply go to our website, startuptoscaleup.club. Find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 154. Click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to your email, basically, and through that link you can join us here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only. Once you're here, you can then type your question in the chat and we'll give you the mic to ask the questions to our team. Today's questions are on talent, anything to do with hiring or keeping or empowering the right people. And there's no need to be shy. On the other hand, if your questions are on other matters, save them for the other conversations we have. Mondays, as you can see, talent. Tuesdays, product and tech. Wednesdays, growth. Thursdays, fundraising. Second Friday of each month, legal. And third Friday of each month, finances. That all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. You can RSVP to any of them via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. And actually, when you're there, you might want to join our WhatsApp community. It's groups of founders, investors, and operators. We'll now read it for the live stream. So I'll read another question. This is from a bootstrap fintech startup in Leeds. They're developing financial inclusion tools tailored to underserved communities, but the pressure of tight deadlines and limited resources is impacting team morale. So the questions we have is, one, what are some effective ways to build a culture of resilience and engagement within a remote first low budget environment? And two, how can we measure the impact of these engagement initiatives to demonstrate to future investors that we are creating a supportive, high performing work environment? So today's questions are mainly about culture and supporting each other, but especially on sort of remote-oriented businesses and startups. I think we can start with Carl. And
maybe we could go on to Jeff, and last but not least, Margaret, please. Carl?
Sorry, I missed part of that. Can you just repeat the question, please?
Missed that, did you say?
Yeah, I missed that. If you just repeat the question, please.
Yeah, of course I can. So I'm the founder of a I'm a bootstrap fintech startup in Leeds. developing financial inclusion tools tailored to underserved communities, but the pressure of tight deadlines and limited resources is impacting our team morale. What are some effective ways to build a culture of resilience and engagement within a remote first, low budget environment? And two, how can we measure the impact of these engagement initiatives to demonstrate to future investors that we are creating a supportive, high-performing work environment?
Okay. I mean, I think the first point is it's hard to do it.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Sorry, what I was saying is it's very hard to do that. And I think no one likes to sort of hear this, but there are just situations where the ask is too much. And I think you have to be open to that as a possibility. If you get to a point where with being bootstrapped, it's just too much and it's too much of a strain, I think you at least have to be open to the possibility that, maybe we have to do something, much more fundamental or different to do it. So I know people don't like to hear that, but I think that's important to consider that some configurations are just too difficult. I think I would suggest with the second part of that question, starting to measure things like you can get people to sort of self-test in per week in terms of how they think they're feeling, where they're rating their own level of burnout, for instance. I think you can be methodical on tracking when you're giving people time off in between sprints and stuff like that. So I think the first step on it is to take it actually seriously as a work stream. Everyone takes the idea of mental health and workplace sustainability seriously, but that very often doesn't result in actions like the same actions you would do on a finance work stream or a tech work stream. So I think starting with some basic metrics that you are looking at measuring around that is the first and best place to go. I think that when you show people in the company that it matters and that it's, you're looking at these things and then you're trying to at least periodically get together and talk about what they mean, both at an individual and a group level, I think that, can go a long way. I think that starting to measure them, et cetera, is also something to the point about, demonstrating future value. I think that I don't want this to be a commercial for what we do, but the basic thing we found over the years is training people in having a very short weekly check-in. So even if it's just literally for 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 5 minutes, but a scheduled weekly check-in where you just hit pause on whatever else is going on in the world. Having that each week, we talk about it as being like a heartbeat of self-care, is very powerful and something you can certainly do company-wide and track, and something that I believe is or can be very strongly correlated to just better decisions and better self-care generally.
Thank you, Carl. Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that, Carl. I think what I'll do is I'll focus now on that part of the question that talked about how do we measure and demonstrate culture and engagement to investors. Well, the first thing you don't want to do is misrepresent, a lie, and or kind of misdirect, if you will, people into thinking that you've built just the perfect organization where resilience and culture are everything and everybody's really, really happy to be there and everything else, only to have that potentially start crumbling down around you. So I think it's really important to take this stuff very, very seriously and to actually generate data, that basically you can kind of fall back on and see. So notions like creating pulse surveys, very light, very regular, 5 questions once a month. You can even run around Google Forms or Poly for Slack, or simple, very, very cheap, if not free tools. And then basically kind of like collate that data, cover off things like motivation and psychological safety, the clarity of direction, the support from leadership, and the confidence in the team. Very, very useful tools. I've used these quite a lot. and you basically can build up some really interesting kind of trends and patterns emerging over the course of 3, 6, 8, 12 months, which really kind of show the ups and downs. And importantly, you can also use that to help diagnose areas where you think you might be having trouble, and or use it as confirmation, that these are areas that probably need fixing. Again, track trends, not exact scores, and making sure you share openly with everybody, not just shareholders, right, but everybody in the team, because that just builds credibility. I think this notion of like, kind of cultural snapshots, culture came up 3 times in this session, and it's super important. So this notion of gathering anonymous feedback, what's the one thing helping you thrive, as an example, or one thing holding you back? These are the sorts of questions that you would kind of ask in sort of an agile retrospective. And I think kind of adopting the agile approach, especially when you're small, you're bootstrapped, you're working hard, there's lots going on. You need achievable bits to kind of get excited about. You need to kind of break down the work into bite-sized chunks that everybody can get their head around and feel confident in completing and delivering to. The only other thing too is taking a look at productivity and retention. I think kind of doing a very, very simple weekly log, to kind of like look at sort of the output metrics. What actually got shipped, what bugs got fixed, what support tickets got resolved, whatever it is that you're doing, and then kind of keep an eye on the team churn, if you will, or the retention of individuals, especially your top performers. How they have exit interviews? Well, do stay interviews. Talk to the people about why is it you're still here? What do you look forward to? What do you enjoy? What can be improved upon? And everything else. Always ever be reaching out to people for feedback. And they will be very honest with you, especially in smaller companies. Anyway, that would be my 2 cents. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to shut up and hand it over to Margaret.
Thanks, Jeff. Margaret?
Hi. So yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you shared about doing those like pulse, any kind of anonymous pulse surveys. Like, I would say every 4 to 6 weeks. You can use even free tools like Google Forms, or there's also, I think I've heard of something called Police, like a Slack add-on, and basically asking people questions like, do you feel supported in your work? How connected do you feel to the team? Are you proud of what we're building? And then track response trends over time, and combine that with metrics that you can measure, like retention rate or project delivery speed. So so that kind of stuff, when you then speak to investors, you can present these insights as a proof that your startup is not just surviving on those limited resources, but it's actually actively building a high performing culture. But in terms of building a culture of resilience and engagement on a low budget, I think that starts with how you lead. So be transparent about the challenges, but also like equally consistent about celebrating small wins, progress updates, successful deployments, user feedback that shows impact, and normalize open dialogue around stress and burnout by encouraging like regular check-ins, even like 10 minutes weekly, where people can just speak honestly without judgment. And also create light team-driven rituals that foster connection. So maybe those async Friday wins, peer shout-outs, monthly mini retrospectives focus on what helped you stay motivated this month. And also empower the team to shape how they work. Flexibility and autonomy are free but very powerful motivators, and always tie work back to impact. When people are reminded that their efforts are helping undeserved communities, that also helps like fuel purpose and pride. So I would say that, and I need to go because I have another call starting now.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Margaret.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Jeff, thank you. Jeff, Carl, any parting words before we wrap it up, or would you?
Nothing for me, unfortunately. I got to hop.
Yeah, mine too. Nothing for me, but just take care of yourselves. That would be the final word.
Well,
take care of yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much from all
Thanks,
of
Anton.
you. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Jeff, and best of luck. Right, just some quick bits from me before you go. Number one, this was Startup Talent Q&A 154. We do this every Monday from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, where we seek to help startups with whatever questions you have in your talent journey, whether you want to know how and where to find the right people, how to hire them, how to keep them, how to empower them, maybe how much to pay them, your company culture, perhaps your branding, and all that jazz. We are unable to monitor questions on the live stream. So next week, if you do have any questions, join us live on Microsoft Teams, please. It's audio only. And just like all the other events we do, you can register via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. Now, we run 6 regular events. Mondays, as you saw today, it's talent. Tuesday's product and tech. Wednesday's growth. Thursday's fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And like I said earlier, you can RSVP to any of them via site startuptoscaleup.club. And actually, when you're there, you might also want to join our WhatsApp community. It's groups of founders and investors and operators that you can join. There's a WhatsApp icon at the top and bottom of our website when you're there. As far as my parting words are concerned, just remember the startup journey can be both exciting, but also quite challenging. So try to have some fun in the meantime and be kind to yourself and everyone else for that matter too. Otherwise, see you tomorrow for Startup Product and Tech Q&A. We're going to have some amazing CTOs and Chief Product Officers join us on the panel to answer your questions. So have a great afternoon and God bless you all. Bye-bye for now.